in the distance compared to homes, beaches, the dike, and also the community of Mario-Canam. According to information from SOPFE, fire number 318 has continued to move northwards and increase in activity in the afternoon. There are still concerns in terms of the spread and behavior of the fire. Based on information we received this morning, and always keeping in mind the priority of protecting people, we are keeping the evacuation in place for Moisy, Lagueg, and ready alert for Saint-Famille, north of Como Street. However, weather seems to be in our favor. There has been an announcement of significant precipitation in the coming days. This news, along with deployment of ground operations of SOPFE organization, support from the Army, Fire 215 could be controlled within the next few days. Our hearts are with all the people who have been evacuated. We know that you're eager to go home, but once again, I ask you to be patient so that once it is possible to go back home, you will be able to sleep soundly, knowing that all members of your family are safe. Today, people from Saint-Île woke to a cloud of smoke. To minimize risk to health, please follow the instructions issued by Côte-Nord Public Health. Those are stay inside when possible, keep windows and doors closed at home or at work, shut down any air recirculators, and limit or stop any physical activity outdoors. For workers who are wondering about exposure in their places of employment in the air, please contact the CNESST or call 1-866-644-4545 to get the correct information. Once again, I would like to thank all of the responders who have been working during this period, as well as all citizens of cette île for their resilience and solidarity. Now in English.
The fire continued to move yesterday, heading north, becoming more active in the afternoon. There are still concerns about the fire's progress. Our priority is to protect our citizens. We are maintaining the evacuation for Moisy, Plage, and Lac-d'Aigle, and the pre-alert for Sainte-Famille. Today, we woke up to a cloud of smoke. For your health, let me remind you of the guidelines of the Direction de Santé Publique de la Côte-Nord. Stay indoors, close the window indoors, turn off the air exchanger, avoid physical activities outdoor. Thank you for your cooperation and solidarity. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Je laisse la parole à Madame la ministre Champagne-Jourdain.
I pass the floor. As the mayor said, everyone in Côte-Nord woke up to an incredible amount of smoke in the city. Air quality has deteriorated since yesterday. Based on wind direction, the situation can change rapidly. Today, based on the most recent information in Quebec, there are 160 fires active across the territory. Obviously, the ones close to cette île is the focus of attention of responders given the proximity to the city and its strength. Given the proximity to the city, it might be forgotten about because we're not seeing the smoke. But when the mayor and I saw the affected areas, we did notice that the situation can change in an instant. So even though you might think that the fires are far away, They really are at our doors. The strength and surface area of the fire is impressive. So please let teams make some headway. Forest firefighters have work to do because even though the fire might be 6 or 7 kilometers away, the areas are difficult to access. But we are in good hands. Yesterday, there were over 130 personnel on site, and another 100 will be coming today. They have been trained to deal with stop-feu. There will also be support provided to operations for Schefferville, Mangani, and Basse-Côte-Nord. We are also keeping an eye on Fermont. Now, to the citizens, I would like to say this. Stay strong. Reinforcements have come to our aid. There is also increased presence of Sûreté du Québec in the area. The forest fires that we're seeing in Côte-Nord are unprecedented, and as is the help we are receiving. I would like to conclude by thanking all personnel who have come to support us at every level in the region of Sept-Îles, but also in Côte-Nord in general. Thank you for supporting us through this situation. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Minister. Now, Joël Sauvé, Director of Sept-Îles Health and Safety Services. Details we provided about the work to make certain installations and facilities secure in the municipality. Hello, everyone. Since Friday, we have been using external teams in order to assist local firefighters. They are doing a colossal amount of work right now to ensure that strategic facilities in the city are secure. This is being expanded as well because we're also protecting telecom towers and other strategic facilities in the region. Teams in Sept-Îles, along with firefighters from Quebec, Lévis, Saguenay, and Forestville, are currently in place here in Sept-Îles. Yesterday, we expanded the secure zone, and there was some protection put around some of these strategic facilities. This allowed us to provide more effective protection as the fire, to prevent fire from breaking out in these facilities. Today, we will be moving forward with other implementations. Sprayers will humidify some of these areas to prevent fires from breaking out. For example, the water treatment plant and the city's drinking water facilities. We've also put sprayers in those areas. We're also protecting the generator that will allow us to continue providing power to the city. We are on the ground today. There are specific operations that will be carried out in terms of moistening soils. We'll be using enormous amounts of water and carrying that water to telecom towers to protect them in the event that the fire comes closer. This is what fire services are doing, and I would like to thank all of the responders supporting us. We're seeing incredible coordination at the command center within the municipality. All actions are being planned from that command center, and that will be the case in the next coming days. External assistance is planned until Wednesday. I've made a request to extend that for 3 to 5 days. This is to ensure that we still have this extra help over the next few days. Thank you. That's reassuring. To continue with security, I'm going to pass it off to Sûreté du Québec to talk about their operations. When it comes to Sûreté du Québec, we still have the same number of personnel and officers. So we're asking people to cooperate with police officers. We're seeing some information on social media, but unfortunately that is not reaching us. So police are trying to reach people and make things more secure. Sometimes police are dispatched to certain areas based on false information and then are not where they need to be. If the situation changes or evolves, we will not hesitate to assign additional personnel to make sure that people are safe. Right now, there are no operational cases to report within the last 24 hours or since Friday. There are no incidents at the moment. We'll continue to do our work, and I'd like to repeat, if there are any issues, call the appropriate services that may be reported or noted. Thank you. Now, Manon Asselin, Director of the Côte-Nord Services. Planning continues on our side. If there's a need for evacuation of residents from the long-term care home or other areas, then we will do so. Planning continues in that regard. If there's a need for evacuation, we are ready. I'd like to remind everyone, if you need to have a consultation, please call Info Social, option 2. We have information across Côte-Nord. Personnel are there to help you. And we also have personnel and teams that will be able to help you and provide support during these difficult times. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who has helped us. The public, community organizations, everyone has pitched in and really helped in this situation. Now I'll pass it off to Ms. Corny for an update. Today, air quality is poor in the city of Sept-Îles. Priority is to limit exposure to forest fire smoke by applying measures as much as possible. These were instructions that the mayor indicated, and I'll repeat: stay inside, close windows and doors, as well as garage doors if that applies. Limit taking air from the outside via air exchangers, either by shutting them down completely or using recirculation mode. Also, provide assistance to vulnerable people who may be living alone and taking precautions. For asthmatics or those with cardiac issues or respiratory issues such as emphysema, chronic bronchitis. When air quality is poor, it is recommended that you avoid any type of physical activity outside. Ensure that you have access to your medication and follow your treatment plan according to your doctor's instructions. If you feel discomfort, please contact Info Santé using option 1. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cormier. So that's all our participants today. Does the mayor want to conclude with something? Yes, just before going on to questions. It's the same speech as I gave over the last few days. The authorities in your municipality, members of all ministries or coordination units, have chosen to focus on prevention and security of residents of Sept-Îles. As was previously indicated, having flown over the fires, giving us a bird's eye view, showed us the proximity to the city. We flew over this forest fire. So we did see in the plage sector, Moisy, it seems to be very close when you see it from the air. That is the perception. So having seen that from the air, I can say it is both reassuring and not. Military, police, and firefighters have been deployed from several different municipalities across Quebec. So in the worst possible scenario, know that the necessary personnel will be there. That is what reassures us today, and the public should also be reassured. So maintaining the status quo is what is needed now for prevention. As the situation evolves in the next 24 hours, we will get a picture of that. So the SOPFE team was able to tackle some of the smoke that was seen and conduct flights again. They should be able to. And this afternoon, they should be able to give us an idea of the situation. Thank you. Let's not give up. Keep hope. And we will keep you informed based on any information and the developments in both of the fires. Weather should help things this evening and over the next coming days with some rain, which should definitely help to reduce some of the flames and fires that are currently active north of Sept-Îles. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we'll go to questions. Please introduce yourself and your media outlet. When it comes to the rain that was mentioned, what could you say about the next coming days? That's a very technical question, and I can't get into the technicalities of those operations. Information that we receive from SOPFE is that there are winds from the south which will push fires northward, but there's no information that it might turn. But as we've said, in Côte-Nord, it's near the river, the wind could change the direction of things, but we're constantly monitoring that situation. Perhaps Mr. Sauvé could provide more technical information. I can't speak for SOPFE, but my discussion this morning with the representative from that association is that it's the same situation today as yesterday. There might be an increase in some of the fire points that might be reactivated in the afternoon, and smoke could be more visible from the city as it was yesterday. You could see the plumes of smoke rising. So the situation today will be similar. As for what awaits us tomorrow, by noon we hope to have a more specific forecast from SOPFE, and perhaps they will be able to provide an update later this afternoon. I'm not qualified to answer technical questions either of that type. As I mentioned yesterday, we could refer you to some units, and public health will be providing air quality indexes via website. And so if it's not already there, it should be done shortly. What about financial assistance? François Bonnardel, my colleague, will be coming with that information in the next couple of days. We're following up on that question, on that issue. Thank you.
On parle du feu 215.
So you're talking about Fire
En fait, c'est qu'il y
215?
a du travail au sol très efficace
Well,
qui se
there
fait en
is
ce
very
moment.
effective work
Et
being done on the
l'arrivée
ground
des
right
militaires
now.
aujourd'hui qui ont été formés,
Military
comme
have
Monsieur le
arrived
maire le
today
disait
that have
tantôt,
been
il y a
trained.
une grande partie de cette équipe-là qui va être
A big
envoyée au
part
sol.
of that
Et
team
le
will be
périmètre
sent
étant moins
to
grand que
the
le feu
site.
378,
And the
les
fire is not as
pronostics
big as Fire
de
318.
contrôle ou de contenu de ce
The
feu-là
forecast of being able to contain that fire over the next couple of days and the arrival of rain in the next coming days makes it possible for us to say that that fire could be controlled in the next coming days. But of course, we don't have a magic wand or a crystal ball to be able to be certain, but we expect that in the short term.
Est-ce qu'il y a des façons sécuritaires, si on veut, de se déplacer dans la ville malgré la qualité de l'air? Puis est-ce qu'il y a des personnes